was around January 2016 when it happened. I felt lonely since I had been single for a long time, and despite the advice of my family and friends, I went on Match.com to meet someone who could finally make me feel whole again. As cheesy and small-minded as it may sound, I just wanted to spend my Valentine's Day with someone special instead of keeping my eyes glued to the television all day while munching on some Cheetos all by myself. After browsing every profile, I finally stopped looking when I found Emma. Everything about her was attractive. She was definitely my type. At that moment, I felt she was the perfect match. So, with no time to lose, I messaged her immediately, hoping she wouldn't give me the cold shoulder. Hours passed, making me feel edgy, but the wait was worth it. When she finally replied, my heart skipped a beat, and we have kept in touch ever since. We called each other day and night, talking about everything and anything, and as the weeks passed, I felt we had grown closer. So, 2 days before Valentine's, we decided to meet up. Of all the fancy stuff going through my head, taking her to a hotel was the best choice. It meant good food and a luxurious room, but the most exciting part was yet to come with her and I on the bed. So, I checked in a day earlier, intending to spice things up a little as I set up the room to create the perfect atmosphere. The following night, Emma was set to arrive. I'm not going to lie, I was nervous as hell, as if it was a first date all over again, but I didn't want to back out now. So, I gave her the details, including the hotel I was at and the room I was waiting in. At first, I was afraid she'd be under the impression that I was desperate, but when she told me on the phone that she was on her way, it boosted my confidence. About half an hour later, I heard a knock on my door. I took a deep breath and opened it, expecting to see the attractive woman I saw in the photos on Match.com. However, I was disappointed when she looked subpar, totally different from the pictures I had seen. She wore a sleeveless shirt and a short flashy skirt with a bulging belly, and dark round circles around her eyes, making her look like a zombie. Moreover, her hair was disheveled and greasy, like she hadn't washed it in days. She was a freaking catfish. I couldn't believe I was being scammed. But despite my dissatisfaction, I was so desperate to be with someone on Valentine's Day that sleeping with her was my only chance. We had a little chat where she told me how thrilled she was to finally meet me in person, and that I was more handsome in real life than in the photos. I wished I could say the same thing about her, but I held back and decided not to comment on her physical appearance, knowing she'd leave me. Then, as I was about to give her her Valentine's present, her phone rang, and when she picked it up, I heard her say,
"Yeah, he's here, sitting next to me."
I felt my throat dry up. My muscles stiffened. I looked at her with confusion, wanting to ask what was happening. Emma, who was that on the phone with you?" I said as my voice cracked. She didn't say a word. She only stared at me with a blank expression. Then, suddenly, her vigor and interest in me vanished, and I could tell that something was wrong. I just couldn't pinpoint what it was exactly, but then I saw the most disturbing, most horrific thing I have ever saw in my life. A masked man barged in the room, armed and dangerous, saying, "Get down on the floor, now!" I kneeled down with my face touching the ground, sweat pouring from my body as I raised my hands to surrender. Stop! Please, let's talk about this. I didn't do anything wrong. Just let me go."
Shh! Lower your voice. The sooner you cooperate, the sooner we'll be done with this.
Emma scowled. I began to tremble uncontrollably, complying with everything they said as they threatened me to get into their vehicle parked in the back. Then, as we walked to the parking lot, the man said under his breath, "Don't try anything funny. You got that? This isn't the first time we've dumped a dead body." I swear I couldn't breathe, and even when I saw many people pass by, they were unaware of what I was going through. With no other option, I got into the vehicle, and the couple gave me a hell of a ride. The masked man drove so fast that I thought we would crash at any moment. "What do you want from me? I don't have much. I swear." "Shut up. One more word from you, and your family will see you on the news." I was afraid my life was going to flash before me. I might have peed my pants, convinced there was no way to escape. Then, with every chance they got, they forced me to withdraw money from several banks around the city. It was crazy. My head was spinning. I didn't know when, if, or how this nightmare would end. I just wanted to go home. I didn't care if I was alone. Anywhere but here was better. Then, after the 6th bank, they made me strip to my underwear, which I hesitated at first. But when they threatened to hurt me, I couldn't say no. And after giving them what they wanted, they kicked me out of the vehicle in the middle of nowhere. It was so dark that I couldn't even see the path I was trekking. There were no light posts nor glowing street signs to give me direction. I was lost, but at least I was alive. Since then, I couldn't look at Valentine's Day the same again. I deleted my profile on Match.com and decided to meet people the right way instead of going online. I didn't know that wanting someone so much could lead me so close to death. Now, whenever it was Valentine's Day, I just spend it at home alone, keeping the doors locked and the house secured. The story was inspired by a real-life case that went down on Valentine's Day of 2016. The male and female shown here were the alleged culprits. The animation pretty much sums up the whole ordeal in a nutshell. The assailants have been accused of kidnapping and robbery, which is punishable by 10 to 20 years in prison.
Hey, how's the punch?
I don't know. It tastes a little weird.
Maybe someone spiked it.
I wouldn't be surprised. Every single creep and his inbred cousin came out tonight.
I know, right? This place is a total sausage fest. I guess all the other couples had the right idea not to come. Happy Valentine's, baby! Why don't you come dance with a real man?
Don't touch me.
Hey, back off, buttface. She doesn't want to dance with you. You ever dance with two men at once? I bet she does more than just dance with two men at once.
Ew, get away from me, you creeps. Let's get the hell out of here. I knew we never should have come to this stupid dance.
I know. But we're leaving now. No more of those creeps.
Yeah.
Look, I'm sorry about all that. I had no idea the dance was going to be such a bust.
It's fine. It's not your fault other people can't control themselves. I just wish you would have punched him in the face before he had the chance to touch me.
Yeah, me too. I swear I will if he tries that again.
You better.
Come to my car. Let's get out of here, okay?
Okay.
Where do you want to go?
Anywhere but here.
You look stressed. Do you want to make out or anything?
No.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure.
How about head massage? Like a head massage?
Dude, I just need to relax for a few minutes, okay? Forget about that stupid dance.
I agree. I just hope your prom is better than that.
I don't even think I'm gonna go to prom if it's anything like what I just went through.
Come on, you're gonna make me dance by myself?
Hey, where are you taking us?
You know, that one spot I was telling you about. The one where you can see the whole city?
Oh, it's about time you took me there. It better live up to my expectations.
I'm sure it will. I'm honestly surprised more people don't know about it. It's closer than you'd think. In fact, we're already here.
Really? Whoa, it's beautiful.
I told you. We can see everybody from here, but nobody can see us.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you know, the spot is very secluded and, good for private things.
Come on, really? Right after what happened with that pig?
Hey, I'm not like that guy. I'm just asking if you want to. I've never done this before, and neither have you, so...
So what?
Well, it's Valentine's Day, and we've been together for a while, and now here, it's just you and me. I can't imagine a much better story for our first time. I want it to be special. That would be nice, wouldn't it?
To be honest, it wasn't in my plans for the night, but, maybe we could.
Really? Wait, what the hell?
Who's that? I thought you said we'd be alone out here.
Because I thought we would be. I don't have a clue who this is. He's got his damn brights on.
Maybe we should just get out of here.
We can't. He blocked us in. There's no way I could turn around.
What's he doing?
I can't tell. Wait, he's getting out.
Wait, what? Why?
I don't know. Maybe he wants to say something.
Screw that. Just turn on the car and let's get out of here. I don't care if you have to make a 30-point turn and drive through the bushes.
Okay. God damn it, not now.
Come on, hurry.
What the? Where did he go?
I don't know. hell? Where did he go? Let me go! Let me go!
Happy Valentine's Day!
It's been 3 days since high school senior Carla Walker went missing after her boyfriend was left with severe head trauma. This morning, the body of a young female was found in the ditch directly behind me. Just moments ago, the medical examiner confirmed the worst. At this time, the police and the grieving family of Carla Walker are urgently asking the public to come forward with any information they have that can help solve what is now a case of homicide.
In 1974, a female named Carla Walker was taken from her boyfriend's car after a Valentine's Day dance. Her boyfriend was knocked unconscious while Carla was abducted. Her body was found in a ditch 3 days later. Allegedly, Walker had suffered 2 days of torture prior to all of this. While the authorities have named persons of interest, no charges ever were made and the case went cold. In 2020, investigators were able to build a full DNA profile of the suspect using new technology. This new evidence allowed investigators to match DNA to one of their previous persons of interest, Glenn McCurley, now 77, was officially charged and sentenced to life in prison.
I didn't meet either of my biological parents until I was in my 20s. I was adopted when I was only 2 years old, and I've been with my adopted family ever since. I never knew my birth parents. Once I got older though, I started to be more curious about them. So more recently, I located my biological father and reconnected with him. It was pretty awkward between us at first, but after a few weeks of spending time together, it got a lot better. There was only one problem. I had been dating this one guy for quite some time. He was a good bit older than me, but it worked out well. His age didn't really bother me, but ever since I started reconnecting with my biological father, things became very strange. Whenever I brought my boyfriend around my father, he would always act like a total jerk and get angry over the stupidest things. When I confronted him about it, all he would say is that he really didn't like my father for some reason. He never gave me any more information than that, even when I pressed him, but he continued to act differently whenever my father came around. They were both really important to me, and it didn't seem fair that I couldn't see them at the same time just because my boyfriend was being a jerk. Still, it wasn't an easy thing to get around. One night, when I was with my boyfriend, I got a call from my dad, inviting me and my boyfriend to a family dinner at his house on Valentine's Day. I thought it was a little strange to have a family dinner on Valentine's Day, but I didn't want to say no since I was afraid it would hurt my dad's feelings. The only problem was I didn't know what my boyfriend would think. When I told him about the plans, he responded a lot better than I expected. After hesitating at first, he agreed to go when I told him that it was important to me. I knew that it would probably be a little awkward, but I really wanted my boyfriend to get over his strange feelings towards my dad. I hoped that the family dinner might do the trick. When Valentine's Day arrived, my dad came and picked me and my boyfriend up in his car. My half-sister was with him. I'd only met her a couple of times, but she seemed cool, so I was excited to get to know her better. My dad lived a few hours away from us, so we had a pretty long drive. Finally, we arrived at my dad's house and sat down for dinner. It wasn't much better once we started eating either. The whole atmosphere was eerie and awkward for everyone. No one seemed comfortable. Even my dad was acting strange and quiet. Then, after no one had said anything for several minutes, my dad suddenly asked my boyfriend if he wanted more wine. My boyfriend agreed, but he seemed kind of scared about it for some reason. Everyone was so tense. I regretted agreeing to the evening in the first place, but I didn't know how to leave without being rude. My dad came back with wine and went to pour some in my boyfriend's glass. Then, out of nowhere, he smashed the bottle over my boyfriend's head. The next thing I knew, I was helping my sister dig a hole in the backyard. I was scared as hell. Then my dad came outside carrying a huge bag and threw it inside the hole.
Keep digging! You need to bury the whole thing!
My hands were shaking, and I started to cry, but I did as he said. I looked over at my sister to see that she was feeling the same, but she too continued to dig. We didn't have any other choice. Several days later, I was still at my dad's house. Each day had been a nightmare, as my dad somehow got progressively more scary and mad. I just didn't know where else to go. I felt totally trapped. Then one day, my dad was watching TV and getting drunk when he suddenly yelled at me and my sister to come downstairs. When we got there, he handed me a machete and told us that we had to go out and butcher the remains, then bury them again. He didn't want to risk anyone finding the body and recognizing it. We were terrified, but we did as we were told once again and headed to the backyard with the machete. A few hours later, we came back inside the house, both covered in blood. My dad told us to never say a word to anyone, and then he told my sister to run upstairs and shower. She immediately did so, obviously happy to be able to clean the disgusting filth off of herself. When the shower turned on, my dad suddenly stood up and walked over to me. He had a strange look in his eye as he got closer and closer. Then he slowly leaned in and kissed me. I resisted at first, but then I gave in. I realized then why he wanted my boyfriend out of the way. It all made sense. A few months after that, we got married. I don't know how it ever got to that point, but it just seemed right. It took something completely horrible to get us there, but it was all worth it. Unfortunately, it couldn't last. A few weeks after our wedding, the police came knocking at our door. Apparently, we were all under arrest for suspicion of murder. My boyfriend hadn't been seen in a long time, and we were the last people to be with him. The trial lasted a while, but my family and I were all eventually convicted and sent to prison. I've been here for almost a year now, and I won't be getting out anytime soon, all because of our deadly love triangle. In 2019, a love triangle involving a woman named Amanda MacLeod, her then boyfriend named John McGuire, and her birth father Larry MacLeod led to a horrific Valentine's Day night. Amanda was adopted as a child and had recently reunited with the birth father and her sister Anna. The father and sister picked Amanda and her boyfriend up from their Indiana residence. The group traveled back to Larry's home in West Virginia. While the visit initially went well, after a week, the father and two daughters began to plot the boyfriend's demise. On the day of Valentine's, the boyfriend was struck with a wine bottle, sedated, and tortured for 2 days before burying him in the backyard. They dug up his remains and dismembered them. Approximately 3 weeks after the ordeal, Amanda and her father got married. The body was later discovered, and all 3 suspects were immediately taken into custody and charged accordingly. Happened around the time of Valentine's Day. I started working at Boots when I wanted to pick up a second job so I could save money for a car. It was just a part-time gig as a cleaner. The other cleaner was this guy named Martin. He was twice my age, and despite us not having much in common, Martin suggested we have a drink down at some pub after work. I didn't want to leave the guy hanging since he was my co-worker, so I took him up on his offer. He paid for my first drink. Initially, I figured he was just being friendly, but then he also paid for my second drink. I told him this wasn't a date, so I was fine paying for myself. I can tell he looked defeated from being shot down, but after some time, he said he was okay with our relationship being purely platonic. From there, we moved on like nothing even happened, and then I eventually paid for a final drink and walked home. For the following few weeks, Martin and I would still chat at work and occasionally go to the pub after work. But it was when we finally traded numbers that I realized Martin still had a thing for me. He texted and called me often, in the kind of way a teenager texts his crush. Martin even started showing up at Boots on his days off when I was working, just to pop in and say hi. The whole situation was getting uncomfortable as hell. By that point, he started asking me to hang out every single day. I tried to gently remind him that we were just friends, but he just wouldn't take the hint. I started to realize that Martin was really just a creepy and clingy old man. I ended up telling my friends about Martin and how he was my co-worker and was clingy and lonely and tried to get in contact with me every other day. They made me realize just how crazy that was and convinced me to ghost his calls and messages and tell him in person that I just wanted to keep it a work relationship. As soon as I made that clear to him through a phone call, he literally started sobbing, confessing his love for me. I eventually hung up and just swept the whole ordeal under the rug. The next couple of weeks were awful. Martin called me non-stop, sending me messages every few minutes about how we were soulmates and that the universe put me and him in the store for a reason. I could mostly ignore that, but I couldn't avoid him at work. Our manager had to tell him that he couldn't be there if he wasn't working or shopping because he was hanging around me so much. His harassment made it damn near unbearable to work there, so I eventually told my boss that I would be quitting by the end of next week. Eventually, on the day of Valentine's Day, things took a turn for the absolute worst. During the morning, just before clocking into work, I remember seeing Martin holding a large bouquet of flowers while smiling like a freak.
Happy Valentine's Day!
I took the flowers out of spite and continued to work as if nothing happened, but things only got creepier from there. Later that night, I went out to get my mail. That's when I saw Martin staring at me from the other side of the curb in front of my house. I was freaked the hell out. He looked like he had been watching my house all night. I never told him where I lived, so I knew he had followed me home from work or something. The situation had gone from a minor annoyance to a complete disaster, but before I knew it, he started walking toward me. I yelled at him to go away and slammed the door. I didn't know whether I should call the cops or not. I called my mom, asking her how I would go about getting a restraining order, but ultimately decided to just finish out my last couple shifts. Then I'd have time to go to court. I eventually finished my last day of work and started heading home for the night. Strangely, I hadn't seen Martin all day. I was walking through the park between the workplace and my house when I heard something from behind a tree.
Martin? What are you doing?
I came to give you this.
A love letter? Oh, come on, Martin. I told you already I don't want you. When are you going to stop?
No! When are you gonna stop denying the truth? We belong together. We were meant for each other.
No, Martin. I don't want your flowers. I don't want your letter. I don't want anything to do with you anymore. Would you please just leave me alone?
Please, I'm begging you. I'll do anything for some young love. You know what they say, the younger the fresher.
What the hell is wrong with you? Martin, please stop.
Shh, no more words from you, my darling Heather. I'll never stop. Not until we can be together. I'll never. Happy Valentine's Day!
This was a Valentine's Day story, inspired by a story based on a jealous worker who stalked and strangled a colleague he was obsessed with. The victim was Heather Jordan, whose remains were found in Langford Park by dog walkers on the 18th of February. 52-year-old Martin Corns had denied taking her out, but it was later revealed that he did in a fit of jealous rage after she shut down his advances. The court heard Kearns had become obsessed with Miss Jordan after meeting her at Boots, where they both worked as cleaners. They started a platonic relationship, where she described as committed friendship, and the prosecution told the court he took her out after she told him she wanted to stop meeting him. Corns bombarded Miss Jordan with more than 2,000 texts and calls, watched her home, followed her around at work, and became increasingly possessive and jealous, the jury heard. He then took her out while she was walking from her home to her weekend cleaning job. A torn-up love letter was found scattered around her body, and the slaying was made to look like a robbery. She was found in a park shelter by dog walkers. Miss Jordan's mother told jurors she intended to lodge a complaint of harassment against Corns with bosses at Boots. She also said she did not like receiving a dozen red roses from him on Valentine's Day, 2 days before the slaying. The jury heard Corns was convinced Miss Jordan was seeing a supervisor at Boots and refused to accept her repeated denials. The courts found Corns guilty and jailed him for life with a minimum of 17 years.
Enter Bruno Mars, the man on the ticket, the smoothest voice in the music industry. I wanna be a millionaire so freaking bad. I need to scare more women. Oh, so sad. Oh, come on, not now. Oh, hey there, beautiful. Happy Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day, Bruno. Oh, you look so hot. I can't wait to see you. Neither can I, my love. Are you on your way? Yes, I'm just a few minutes out. Are you already there? Yeah, I came early and got us a table. You came early? That's not going to be the last time I hear that. Okay, I'll see you then. All right, this could actually work. She's totally clueless. I only have to keep this going until I get one more check. I already got 100,000 from the old fart, and I could use more of that retirement money. I just have to warm up a bit. 'Cause girl, you're amazing! Just the way you are! Hey, Hollywood, wrap it up already! I gotta take a dump! Okay. Sorry about the wait. What am I thinking? I should have never agreed to this. Maybe there's still time to make a run for it. Well, someone's excited to see me. Come here. Hi. Oh, it's so good to finally see you in person. You look a little different. Is your skin darker? Oh yeah. Well, you know, I've been getting a lot of sun on tour. Developed a bit of a tan, I guess. Oh, I see. Here, take a seat. Why, thank you. Such a gentleman. You know, I may have to take out the dentures just for you later, 'cause I bet that's what you like. But of course, the lady must be treated with respect. Oh, please. I bet you don't treat your groupies the same way. What do you mean by that? I'll give you a hint. I want to be your groupie, and I want you to pull something of mine that rhymes with chair. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, okay? I gotta finish taking you out to dinner first. Excuse me, waiter? How may I help you? We're ready to order. Wonderful. Can I get you started with any drinks? I'd like to order a bottle of your finest red wine, and then, let's see. I'll have the margarita flatbread pizza, the fettuccine alfredo with chicken, the smokehouse barbecue burger, the seared ahi tuna, and the filet mignon, medium rare. Okay, and for you, sir? I'll have a steak, medium rare as well, and some carrots on the side. Of course. Your food will be right out in just a moment. So, you're gonna let me backstage so I can watch that tight butt move around while you dance, right? Oh, you want to go on tour with me? Well, yeah. Didn't you say you wanted to be together? I'm not just gonna be alone while you go from city to city going through girl after girl. I want to be the one who gets your 24-karat magic. You see, that might be a little bit of a problem because, well, I don't control who goes backstage. My bodyguards were in charge of that. What? You Bruno Mars! Your employees don't listen to you? It's complicated. A lot goes into running a tour. I mean, I don't even understand all of it. Shut up! Are you even Bruno Mars? Of course I am. Then sing for me. What? Sing for me now, or I'll make sure you never talk to the moon again. I would catch a grenade for ya. I would do anything for ya. What the hell was that shit? You're not Bruno Mars, you dirty liar. Calm down. We can talk about this. You wanna talk? I gave you $100,000. I want my money back. Do you hear me? Stop, please! You lying, cheating scumbag! I swear I'll give you your money back. I knew you were lazy from that song you made. What's this? It's a letter from her. Hey,
scumbag! They just let me off with a fine, so I thought I'd write to you in prison. Just wanted to say I hope you rot. I hope you never get out, and I hope a big, hung inmate crawls into your cot and crams you full of regret 24/7. Or should I say 24-karat magic? No!
This story was inspired by an incident that happened on Valentine's Day. A man named Chinwendu Azuanwu was connected to a scheme that happened between September and October of 2018, involving a 63-year-old North Texas woman who told police that she created an Instagram profile in search of companionship. She told investigators a person pretending to be Bruno Mars reached out to her and made her believe that he was interested in pursuing a meaningful relationship. Documents state the woman fell in love with the Mars account, and at the time, she believed him to be the real singer because he had sent her multiple texts and photos of the artist while he was on tour. She also told investigators that he wanted to quit the tour to be with her. The Mars account then began asking the woman for money. A few days later, the woman sent a $90,000 deposit into his account, which was later found to be withdrawn down to a zero balance. The man was charged with third-degree felony money laundering and was taken into custody.
Desperation around Valentine's Day can get a girl into trouble. Hopefully it's just an embarrassing date that you have to live down over time. But for me, it was much worse. I was in college, and the dreaded date of February 14th was getting dangerously close while I still had no one to call my own. My friends were all over Tinder and kept telling me to get on it too. But after trying it a few times, I knew I wasn't going to find what I was looking for. Most of the men on Tinder, local to me, were just thirsty cutthroats that want to use you once or twice and then never see you again. I was a bit of a hopeless romantic, and I was starting to believe I was becoming more naive and gullible by holding out for the perfect man. That is until one night, when I got a random DM on Instagram from a super hot guy that was just my type. I didn't think it was too good to be true. I was just surprised that he would pursue me over everyone else. His name on Instagram was Anthony something, and his message read, "Hey there, beautiful." It took me a while to work up the courage to reply, but when I eventually did, I texted,
Hi there, handsome.
We hit it off fairly quickly and DM'd each other every now and then. On the third day, he asked me out on a date. I was a little anxious and wasn't exactly ready to see him yet, so I replied with no. Regardless, I found it a little strange that he would pitch to meet at a local hilltop for our first meeting. I always said I couldn't do it for one reason or another, but it became even more uncomfortable when he persisted with it. He would always send messages saying, "How about that local hilltop today? It's beautiful weather right now. How about we go on a bike ride to the hilltop?" I can't believe how many passes I gave him just because I thought he was hot. He asked me to go to the same hilltop every day for 4 days, and he would always shoot down any other date ideas. It was apparent that he was adamant about this hilltop. Eventually, it was the night before Valentine's Day, and I finally had some real time on my hands, but we still hadn't agreed on a date. That's when he asked me a different question saying, "I got us a present for Valentine's Day. Want to know what it is?" I was curious, so I replied back with,
Yes, I do.
A few seconds later, he replies back with, "I got us a nice hotel," and then a wink sign at the end. The way he brought it up made it seem like he booked an expensive room in the nicest hotel in town. But when he sent me the address, my heart sank. It wasn't nice at all. It was this dingy motel on the sketchy side of town. Suddenly, the proposition felt a lot scummier, but I gave him the benefit of the doubt, assuming he was tight on money. I was so excited to finally see him in person that I didn't care where it was, as long as it wasn't that stupid hilltop. After I showered, got dressed, and filled up on gas, I started driving across town to the motel. By then, it was after dark. The parking lot was almost full, so I parked near the lobby. I remember waving through the glass at the clerk behind the desk as I walked past the front building to the room number I was told to go to. I also remember him giving me a strange look that I couldn't understand, but I brushed it off and continued walking. When I got up to the right door, I knocked quietly so I wouldn't draw attention. Nobody answered after a minute, so I knocked again, louder this time. Still no answer. I pounded on the door several more times until it finally opened, revealing my most haunting, worst possible nightmare I could ever imagine. The man who opened the door was this gigantic slob that looked nothing like the Anthony I saw on Instagram.
I don't know if I have the right room. Is Anthony here?
Yes, sweetheart. I'm Anthony.
I felt like I was going to throw up. Everything hit me all at once as I realized I'd been such an idiot to let myself get catfished this bad on Valentine's Day. But as soon as I started to walk away, the sicko reached out and grabbed me by the waist and yanked me into the room like a rag doll. Everything crashed and burned in a matter of seconds. I started screaming for help as he slammed the door and threw me across the room onto the bed. Then, he started to undress as he blocked me in by standing in front of the only exit. He then started stripping down to his underwear as I frantically went to grab the lamp on the nightstand, but it was useless. The creep stomped toward me and smacked the lamp out of my hand, then pushed me over again, this time immediately getting on top of me.
Get off of me! Leave me alone or I'm calling the cops!
His sheer size and weight were enough to pin me down by the arms and legs, and crush my chest so much I could barely breathe. I wailed one last time before he started to smother me. I thought I was about to die in my hotel room, but right as he crouched his face towards me, I heard the door open. Hey! The creep turned his head to the side just in time to get bashed in the face by a baseball bat. He lost his balance and was pushed over off of me onto the floor. That's when I finally saw who came in the room. It was the clerk from the front desk that I waved at a minute ago. Stay on the floor! You move and I bash your head in! I was too stunned to speak. I guess that motel clerk was used to seeing sketchy stuff at that motel and could tell when he needed to intervene. Thanks to his intuition, I'm alive. A few minutes later, the cops arrived and arrested Anthony. I gave my statement to the police and got an escort back home. I didn't sleep for weeks, and it only got worse when the story hit the news. It turns out that he was linked to the victims of several fatalities that were found at a local hilltop. The same thing he tried to get me to go to. It's no wonder why he was so persistent about it. It terrifies me knowing that could have easily been me. This story was inspired by a story of a psychotic man that used social media platforms like Instagram and Snapchat to lure his victims to a hilltop on Valentine's Day. As stated in the story, he has been linked to several cases. The username Anthony was of course just an alias. His real name is Keegan, and he has since been sentenced for his heinous crimes.
I don't know if I have the right room.
This happened a few years ago around Valentine's Day. I had just come out of a serious 5-year relationship. I wasn't looking for anything serious after that, but was still open to dating. That's when I met this guy on MySpace, which was what everyone used at the time. He was this attractive guy who claimed to manage a fancy restaurant and own a house. After talking for a while, we ended up getting together. We got along well at first, but I eventually found out that he had been lying about a lot of things. He wasn't the manager of anything. He was just a cashier, and he didn't own a house either. He lived with his parents. Not only was he a liar, but he was also a loser. I wanted to leave him, but I stuck it out for a while as he convinced me he would have all of those things. However, as time went on, I saw him more and more for what he was. That being a lazy piece of shit. When I stopped believing his BS, he got angry. We started getting into huge arguments and fights, and I realized that the guy had serious anger issues. He would scream and swear in my face, right in front of his mother, and even punched holes into the wall of her house. One night, after we'd been together for about a year, his threats became real when he grabbed a baseball bat and started swinging it at me. I managed to run to the bathroom and lock myself inside, but that still didn't stop him. He tried to smash right through it to get to me.
Open this door up so I can rip your ass in half!
His mother had to pull him away from the door and calm him down. By then, I had called the police. I didn't come out of the bathroom until they arrived. When they did, my boyfriend had the audacity to claim I was the one attacking him. He tried to get them to file a restraining order on me. Of course, they didn't believe him. The door and walls had dents from the baseball bat he had, and the fact that he didn't have any marks or bruises on him at all. Instead, I filed a restraining order against him and actually got one. That's when I broke up with him, and that's when the harassment started. He found every way he could to try and contact me, but I blocked and ghosted him at every turn. He even got disposable phones so he could call and text me, but I caught on. This went on for weeks, and no matter what I told the police, they didn't seem to care enough to help me. Things started to get legitimately scary, so I eventually made the decision to stay with my parents for a while. I felt a lot safer around them as opposed to being alone, knowing my ex knew where to find me. I didn't like being alone in general, which was what led me to date that psycho in the first place. It felt especially depressing to be alone when Valentine's Day rolled around. I hadn't been single for Valentine's Day for 5 years. That night, my parents went out for a date, leaving me alone in the house for the evening. I had nothing to distract me from the messages I was getting from my ex, despite getting a restraining order. So I put my phone down and tried to watch TV, but ended up getting tired and went to bed early. I couldn't quite fall asleep right away though. I kept hearing noises from outside. It sounded like someone or something was rustling in the bushes. I figured it was my parents coming home from their date, but after several minutes, I never heard anyone come into the house. Things went quiet again, but I couldn't relax or try going back to sleep until I at least checked on it. I got up from my bed and looked out the window, only to see my ex standing outside like a psycho freak. We made eye contact, which sent him sprinting toward the house. I closed my curtains, but the freak charged and busted through the front door. That's when I heard his footsteps coming up the stairs. There was no lock in my bedroom, and to make matters worse, I couldn't find my phone to call the police. Before I knew it, he kicked down my bedroom door and was standing right in front of me, revealing a knife from behind his back.
It had been a wonderful Valentine's Day, up until the moment my wife and I returned home from dinner. We thought that even with everything that was going on with our daughter and her crazy ex-boyfriend, that she could be left on her own just for a few hours. But then we got out of the car and saw that the front door had been broken in. My wife immediately called the police. I told her to wait outside while I checked the house. The first place I went to was my daughter's bedroom, and nothing could prepare me for what I saw when I walked into her room. My daughter was horribly butchered, clinging to life and gasping for air. We rushed her to the hospital, but it was too late. The man that took her out was on the run for a few hours before the police caught him. What he did to this family, to my daughter, can never be forgiven.
This story was inspired by a disturbing Valentine's Day incident regarding a man named James Carter II, who was sentenced to 60 years in prison for taking out his ex-girlfriend with a knife. The victim was his ex-girlfriend, 25-year-old University of Hartford graduate student named Tiana Notice. The incident happened just outside her Plainview apartment on Valentine's Day. It was alleged that the woman was punctured about 20 times and was barely alive when police arrived. Notice unfortunately passed 2 hours later at the Hartford hospital. It was just about a week after her 25th birthday. In 2008, her relationship with Carter went south, so she ended it. Carter apparently wasn't happy with this decision. Tiana even got an order of protection against Carter, but that didn't stop him. 1 month before Notice was taken out, she had a restraining order on Carter and unsuccessfully sought help from the local police department several times because she feared for her life. Her father and mother tearfully addressed the judge during the sentencing hearing and asked him to sentence Carter to the maximum. Carter chose not to attend the sentencing hearing. He was ultimately handed down a 60-year prison sentence, and his case helped influence changes to the state's laws. This happened around Valentine's Day. At the time, I was married to my husband Tony for 24 years. We were high school sweethearts and got married after finishing college. We had 2 sons together, and for as long as I knew Tony, his best friend was this guy named David. As the years went by and friends came and went, Tony and David stayed in touch. That's when things started to get rough between me and Tony. Our honeymoon phase seemed to last forever, but then one day, something was burdening me about still being in the marriage. Unfortunately, by then, Tony had become worn out from life, buried in his work and either unable or unwilling to put in the effort to keep our marriage alive. This led to our first serious arguments in 30 years of being together, so I went to David. David was still friends with Tony, but at that time, they were more distant than they had ever been. Despite still being old friends with Tony, David understood my plight and helped me through it. He had similar issues in his marriage, so he easily related to me. I started to see David in secret, just to talk. Eventually, I realized I had truly fallen out of love with my husband. That's when I started sleeping with David. We both tried as hard as we could to hide our affair, but it was hopeless. We kept coming back to each other, and I would try to see him every other day. And every time I saw him, we got intimate and kept cheating on our significant others. After a few years, Tony started to notice. He started to snoop around and berate me with questions like, why was I really staying late at work or which friends I was going out with? Then one day, he got a hold of my texts with David and finally found out. Only I didn't know that until he followed me to David's house and confronted us on the street. What happened next between the two of them was, up until that point, the most violent and frightening state I had ever seen my husband in.
You rat bastard! This whole time you were screwing my wife!
Stay back. Let's just talk about this.
There's nothing to talk about! You betrayed me! Both of you destroyed everything!
It was already over, Tony. Don't you understand that?
Babe, please.
Shut it, bitch! You're the hoe that went and slept with my best friend! No wonder you're so damn loose down there! Ah!
A fight broke out. They were wailing on each other, punching and kicking and slamming. I tried to break them up, but the people on the street had to intervene. They both came away from the fight with bloody knuckles and bruised up faces. I didn't know what to do after. I defaulted on going home with my husband, but oh God, it was unbearably awkward. I felt like anything I said might set Tony off all over again. I knew he was furious with me and with David, but I couldn't put all the blame on him. When we got home, we told the kids to go to their rooms for the night. Then we finally sat down to have the discussion. At last, I admitted to Tony I wanted a divorce and that I wanted to marry David. Tony went into a rage and screamed in my face about how much of a horrible person I was for destroying our marriage. I didn't say much. I just let him tire himself out. However, every single day, he would blow up about something completely unrelated and bring it back to the affair. He didn't trust me to leave the house, so I stayed, mostly for the kids. I was in there until Valentine's Day rolled around. I knew for sure I didn't want to spend it at home, so I left to go see David for the first time in a while. There was nothing I could do to keep Tony from knowing where I went once he noticed I left, so I was hoping that he wouldn't do anything crazy. When I got there, I parked my car by the side of the road and was greeted by David, who emerged from his driveway. That's when I saw another car pulling up, and it was Tony. He got out of the car and revealed a firearm tucked in his waistband. I remember seeing David pleading with him, but all it did was cause what happened to happen.
You piece of shit! You took my wife! You ruined my Valentine's Day! You ruined my life! Ah!
David did not survive his injuries. Tony, however, somehow survived. Although the damage was severe, after he was sufficiently healed, he was arrested. I am alone, scared, wrecked with guilt and shame so debilitating I can hardly take care of my sons. When I look at them, all I can see is my husband's face, sometimes intact and sometimes mangled. This story was inspired by a disturbing incident regarding a woman at the center of a fatal Valentine's Day love triangle who had feared her husband would turn violent when she left him for her lover of 6 years. 46-year-old Kathy Riley told her friends that she was afraid of her husband and that she feared he would do something to her or her longtime lover, David Glenn Nichols. She and estranged husband Tony Riley had been high school sweethearts, but had eventually separated after she told him she wanted to marry Nichols. The pair were still living in the same house in Gulgong with their 2 teenage sons. On Wednesday at about 7 a.m., Riley followed his wife to Mr. Nichols' homes. Witnesses to the Valentine's Day slaying say Riley was armed and left off at his love rival. Witnesses to the Valentine's Day slaying say Riley was armed and led off at his love rival. He then did the unthinkable after an hour-long standoff with the police. Riley was taken to the hospital and survived. Riley has been remanded in custody and will be sentenced accordingly.
I still remember when I first met Paul. He was such a great guy, and we hit it off immediately. I was young then, in my early 20s, so I think it was easier to fall hard for him. It only took us a month to decide to move in together. It seemed like the perfect relationship. Of course, my friends all told me that we were moving too fast, and that I should take more time to get to know him, but I didn't want to listen. If only I had. It didn't take long for everything to go bad. Paul started out so kind and understanding, but somehow after we started dating seriously, he completely changed. He became totally psychotic and controlling. At first it was smaller things. He would always decide what we were going to do, and would never listen to any of my suggestions. But then he became crazy jealous too. It wouldn't even be stuff that I did either. Paul would practically go on a rampage anytime another guy even glanced in my direction. Sometimes I would have to stop him from attacking some random guy in a bar just because he thought the guy was staring at him. If I tried to talk about it, he would tell me it was my fault and that I was asking for attention. It was absolutely ridiculous. It was the worst when I went somewhere without him. Paul would snap and accuse me of cheating if I didn't call or message him, even if I was just out with friends or at my family's house. He was really scary when he was mad too. Sometimes I was even afraid that he would actually attack me. He became so jealous that it was incredibly difficult to do anything apart from him. Then, one night, on Valentine's Day, my friends invited me for a girls' night out to celebrate a friend's birthday. I didn't know what I should do at first, since it was Valentine's Day, but Paul and I hadn't really made any plans, and he was still at work. I finally decided to go out with my friends and deal with Paul being upset later. I really wanted some time away from him anyway. I made sure to text Paul that I was going out, and then I tried to put him out of my mind for the night. I just wanted to have some fun with my friends for once without him ruining everything. Of course, that wasn't going to happen though. Throughout the night, while my friends and I were at a bar, Paul texted me nonstop. When I didn't respond, he started completely freaking out and yelling at me.
Where are you? I know you're cheating on me, you bitch!
I finally just decided to ignore his text completely. I knew I was going to have to deal with everything later, but I didn't want to put up with it at that moment. Then, the text turned into calls. After the first couple calls, I put my phone on Do Not Disturb. I was so tired of Paul trying to control me. I decided that I would finish out my night, but I was seriously considering breaking up with him at that point. The problem was I knew it wouldn't be easy. I tried as best as I could to have a good time with my friends, but when it was time to head home, I was scared as shit. I knew Paul was going to completely blow up at me. It was the longest I had ever gone without texting or calling him back, and I didn't know what he was going to do. My friends tried to calm me down and told me that I could grab some clothes and spend the night with them if I needed to. That seemed like a good idea to me, but I still had to break up with Paul first. So my friends dropped me off in front of the house and waited for me outside while I slowly walked up to the front door. I was still scared out of my mind, but I was determined to go through with it. I couldn't keep letting Paul control my whole life. When I got to the door, I paused a second to psych myself up. I figured that I would go in and grab my clothes first, and then I would break up with Paul right before I left. I didn't want to give him any time to react. After a final deep breath, I went to open the door. As soon as I opened the door, I found Paul standing directly in the doorway.
Paul, what are you?
I didn't even have time to react before he grabbed me and yanked me inside, slamming the door behind me. I immediately pushed him away from me and ran to my room to grab some clothes. He was a complete psychopath. I screamed at him and told him that I didn't want to be with him anymore, but that just made him snap even more. He started breaking things and punching holes in the walls while he screamed at me.
Ah! 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 You're not gonna get away with this! You can't leave me! I won't let you!
He was acting so scary, but I was so fed up with him. I started cussing at him and telling him that it was all his fault, but that just made him go even more berserk. He was going so crazy that I actually thought he might try to kill me, and I was scared shitless. I ran out of the house and jumped into my friend's car as I heard shouting still coming from inside.
Ah!
I screamed at my friend to get the hell out of there, and she started pulling out of the driveway as fast as she could. Just as I thought I was safe, Paul came running like a bat out of hell and jumped onto the car. He started hacking at the car with a knife. He had completely lost his mind. He was stabbing like a maniac. His knife punctured the roof and hit the doors. He was trying everything he could to get at us. My friend tried to swerve and shake him off, but he wouldn't let go. This story was inspired by a deadly Valentine's Day incident that happened in 2011. A breakup between a man named Gibson Paul and his then-girlfriend Tamika Peterson happened on that Valentine's evening. Peterson left the apartment she shared with Paul and got into a car with her friends after the ordeal. Paul then snapped and armed himself, letting off at a vehicle which contained Peterson and 3 other individuals. All victims survived except for Peterson. Paul acted as his own attorney for the start of the trial, later requesting a public defender. Paul was sentenced to life in prison.
For the last 6 years, I've been living in fear as a single woman all the way through my 30s and into my 40s. I am forced to fear for my safety, and here's why. It started on a Valentine's Day. I was doing my typical morning routine of watering the plants that grow around my small bungalow home. When I got to the front of the house, I noticed an unusual letter sitting on my porch. It was in a brownish envelope, and on one side had 5 crudely drawn X's, 1 big one and 4 smaller ones circling it. I opened it on my doorstep, and inside was a Valentine's Day card with the cat picture on it. I then opened the card and began reading it. And that's when this growing sensation of nausea and vertigo started to tell me something was very, very wrong. It was a handwritten note full of disturbing things. There were references to my daily activities, revealing that I was being watched, and other sickening comments about me and how I looked and whatnot. But even with all of that, they still had the nerve to sign off on the letter saying, "Lots of loving kisses on Valentine's Day to my sweet little oblivious victim. From your longtime secret admirer who has now become your stalker, Gordon." And at the bottom of the letter, the same symbol of the 5 X's. By the time I finished reading it, my hands were shaking. I didn't know of any Gordon. Freaked out, I phoned the police right away, but I was rather disappointed with the response I got. They said all they could do was file a report and take the letter as evidence. Other than that, they didn't have enough to go off of to look for him. In any case, I didn't get much shut-eye on that first night. When morning finally came, I cowered until I heard the postman come and go, and then I peeked through the blinds to see if there was another brownish envelope with X's on it. Thankfully, there wasn't. A few more days passed and no more letters from Gordon came in, and slowly I was able to feel less paranoid. I started to rationalize the event as perhaps a prank pulled by some neighborhood kids. But unfortunately, that was all out the table on the day when I walked out the door to go to work, and I saw another letter on my porch. I knew it had to be from Gordon due to the 5 X's on it. I didn't want to touch it, but part of me felt like I had to read it. I picked it up and started to unravel the contents, and again, on the front of the card was an odd-looking cat image. On the inside was the handwriting of an insane person confessing their love and admiration for me. He wrote much more in this letter, talking about the things he wanted to do to me, things that gave him pleasure to think about doing, dreams about kidnapping and imprisoning me, all expressed in painstaking and vulgar detail. And again, he signed off with a chummy tone while remembering to remind me that I was in danger, saying, "I hope you know that I think of you all the time, and I wish that we will be together very soon. Endless, messy love and kisses from your stalker and soon-to-be killer, Gordon." And then capping off with his signature X. I stood there for a brief moment as the adrenaline built up and then boiled over, sending me into a deep panic.
Leave me alone or I'm calling the cops!
I went inside and immediately locked all the windows and doors before I got my phone to alert the authorities again. However, the response was the same. They took the letter as evidence and added it to the pre-existing case file, then basically told me to stop overreacting. I tried to reason with them, saying I felt I was in danger, but they brushed me off like they had bigger things to worry about. And to nobody's surprise, about a week later, my worst fears were realized. It was in the middle of the night, and I was still unable to settle down from receiving Gordon's last threatening letter. I had been tossing and turning in bed for hours when I first heard noises coming from outside my bedroom window. I shot up out of bed to quickly hide underneath it. When I stopped moving, I could hear the sound again, and it was clearly footsteps, like someone was walking around my house, just outside my bedroom, getting closer and closer, until it finally stopped. I had to cover my mouth to keep from screaming when I saw the silhouette of a man looking through my window. I knew it had to be that Gordon freak. I went frozen stiff, hoping he would just go away. But then he tapped on the glass and started talking like he knew I was in there. Hey beautiful, are you sleeping? I forgot to give you something from last Valentine's Day. I wanted to vomit, but I was forced not to move a muscle. I just waited in agonizing silence, praying he would just go away. After several excruciating minutes passed, I never heard him walk away. His silhouette was gone, but I felt he was still outside my house. I could feel the fear inside me growing, convincing myself that if I continued to let him stand out there, it was only a matter of time before he couldn't resist the temptation to break in. At last, I made a break for it, climbing out from under the bed, grabbing my phone from the nightstand, and running to the other side of the house as I called the police yet again. I stayed on the phone with the operators as I cowered in my linen closet, waiting for help to arrive. I was quite disappointed when the cops came and Gordon had already left the scene. All they found was another letter on my doorstep, but I didn't bother picking it up. I just let the cops take it, and that's all they ended up doing. They literally made no effort to find the man who continues to torment me to this day. Since then, I have shared my story with the internet, urging anyone who sells letters, works at the post office, or thinks they recognize the handwriting to contact me. Over the years, my paranoia has grown worse and worse, but I don't want to move away from my home. I refuse to admit defeat to this scumbag. Still, it strikes fear in me to know that Gordon is still out there, and still knows where I live. This story was inspired by a real-life case regarding an alleged stalker quote-unquote named Gordon. The images below are photographs of the Valentine's Day cards, with the distinguishable cat image and disturbing messages with the signature 5 X's. Since then, the culprit has been caught. Here is the image of him, revealing Gordon to be a 68-year-old man who had been obsessed with the victim for years. He has since pled guilty to one charge of stalking.
On Valentine's Day of 2019, I experienced the most terrifying moment of my life. Things had been leading up to that night for a while. At the time, I lived in a small house by myself. I used to take walks around the neighborhood almost every day to stay active and clear my head. But after a while, I had to stop. I started noticing this creepy older man every time I left the house for a walk. At first, I just noticed him staring at me from across the street. But day by day, things got more serious. If I didn't see him on foot, I would notice the same car slowly passing by me on my walk over and over again. It didn't take long to realize that it was the same creep in the driver's seat. I hoped that switching up my routine would get him off my back, but he apparently didn't have anything better to do than stalk me. Just when I thought I was safe and could enjoy some time alone, he would appear out of nowhere and start making advances.
Hi there, beautiful. Could I ask you a question?
Who are you? Where did you come from?
Would you like to be my woman?
No, you're disgusting.
I could take care of you. You wouldn't have to lift a finger. Let me use my fingers.
You're sick and you're a freak. Stop following me.
Let me love you!
I'm calling the cops!
He would lunge at me and try to grab me, but I ran away every time he got too close. It happened several times. The only advantage I had was that he was much older, and I was easily able to outrun him. Of course, I knew I was still in danger. He never made himself visible around my house, but if he could find me in any random spot in the neighborhood at any time of day, then there was a very good chance he knew where I lived, and that I lived alone. I didn't have space for a roommate, and I didn't love going for walks more than I valued my life. So, after a while, I knew I had to stay inside the house and keep it locked up. When I needed to leave, I would only use my car, and I would keep a bottle of mace clutched in my hand. However, it was around that time that I started to feel truly afraid and trapped. I filed a restraining order against him. It was a double-edged sword. On the one hand, I finally knew his name, I had a written injunction against him in case he tried anything, and he wasn't allowed within 500 feet of my house. On the other hand, if there was any doubt that he knew my address before, the restraining order got rid of it. I never thought I would have a stalker, but I suddenly realized how knowing that there's some psycho creep out there obsessed with you severely changes almost every aspect of life. I became paranoid of every sound, every shadow, every flicker of light. I rarely left the house unless I knew I would be around people, and I tried to have company as often as possible, even if we didn't do anything. The worst part was, I still kept seeing him from the car, and he always stared me down as I passed him. After months of being stalked by him, the early morning of Valentine's Day finally came. In the middle of the night, I woke up to a noise in the house. After a few minutes, I assumed it was just a random creak in the house and I was being paranoid, so I laid down and tried to go back to sleep. I was half awake several moments later when my eyes opened on their own. In the darkness, I saw a blurry figure at the foot of my bed. Fear washed over me as my vision suddenly became clear. It was him. He found his way into my room and was standing just a few feet away from me.
Happy Valentine's Day!
Before I knew it, the psycho jumped on top of me. He tried to take what he wanted, but I fought back with everything I had. I screamed for help even though I knew it was pointless. Eventually, I kicked him hard enough to get him off me. While he was vulnerable for a moment, I kicked him in the face again until he fell off the bed. I got ready to fight more, but when he got up, he just ran away. I was thankful that he didn't have a weapon, but I didn't wait for him to come back with one before grabbing my phone and calling the cops. By the time they arrived, my stalker was long gone, but I gave them the description of what happened and how he looked. After a long, stressful Valentine's Day, I finally got a call in the evening from the police station telling me my stalker had been arrested. They slapped a few charges on him and sent him to jail, but I knew that meant he would be roaming the streets again by the end of the year. I took advantage of the valuable time without his presence and got my life back on track. I moved across the city so he wouldn't be able to find me when he got out. Part of me wanted to move clear across the country, but in the end, I knew I would hate it if I allowed him to take my friends and family away from me. These days, I continue to keep my eye out for trouble like him, and I take kickboxing classes in case I ever need to make another creep taste the heel of my boot. The story was inspired by a disturbing Valentine's Day incident that happened in 2019. Cape Coral police say a man was arrested after being accused of breaking into the home of a woman who has a restraining order against him so he could wish her a happy Valentine's Day. According to police, a 38-year-old man named James Carobs Boeing broke into the woman's home and was standing at the end of her bed when she woke up. She told James to leave her room and immediately called the police to report the man. The victim has an active restraining order against him which says he can't be within 500 feet of her residence. Before police could arrive to the scene, James left the house in his car and was seen driving off Chiquita Boulevard into a dead end where an officer pulled him over. Ignoring verbal commands from the officer, James drove off and his Honda was located a short time later, abandoned after he fled on foot. An officer later noticed a man matching James' description walking down the street. When approached, he gave a false name to the officer but was eventually identified. He was then slapped with an abundance of charges and sent to jail. This happened in 2007 around Valentine's Day. I guess most relationships tend to lose their magic as people get older. I just never thought that it would happen so soon. When my husband James and I were young, we were so romantic with each other, and we'd always take the time to go out together and have fun. We had a great physical relationship too. Now it was different though. As we got older, we started working more and adding a lot more stress to our lives, and I guess we just fell out of the habit of spending time together. I couldn't remember the last time we'd been out on a date, and unfortunately ruined our intimacy too. We hadn't done anything in years. It was starting to affect me. I barely even felt like I had a husband anymore. I didn't want to cheat on him, but I had urges to. And I knew it would happen eventually if something didn't change. The problem was, we tried countless times and nothing worked. It was like my husband wasn't even attracted to me anymore. We rented tapes from an adult store and watched online movies, but they didn't help. I bought a bunch of nice lingerie to try to make myself more appealing to him, but he barely even seemed to notice. We even tried different oils and supplements, but those had no effect either. I didn't know what else to do. I often recommended that he take happy pills, but he always avoided the conversation when I brought it up. James claimed that they weren't good long term, and he didn't want to depend on them. I had begged him multiple times, but he always refused, so we continued to have the same problem, and there didn't seem to be any solution. After so long of not being together in that way, we started to have other issues too. We began to argue and fight all the time. It wasn't even always about the happy pills either. Sometimes we would fight over almost nothing at all. There was always a lot of tension between us, no matter what was going on. It became so insane that we didn't even sleep in the same room anymore. Most days we barely spoke to each other. I could tell that my husband blamed me for most of it, but I think it was more just to make himself feel better. He had to feel guilty that we couldn't be intimate, but he still refused to try the pills. Then, after this had been going on for some time, it began to get even worse. James seemed to be slowly losing his mind. Sometimes I would hear him snap downstairs when I was going to bed. It would be all quiet, and then I would suddenly hear him screaming and banging around.
That woman ruined me! She ruined my anaconda! I hate her!
It all tended to be similar to that. It seemed like he totally hated me. I didn't know what was pushing him over the edge, but it sounded like he was going completely insane. I began to be scared for my life. James continued to get worse, and I didn't fully know what he could be capable of. If he blamed me for everything that was going wrong, then what would stop him from deciding to get rid of me? I grew depressed. I considered divorcing him, but I didn't know how he would take it. It just seemed like such an extreme option. We had been happy together once. I wanted to get back to that point, but everything was so bad. I didn't know if it was possible to fix it. Then, one day I decided to take matters into my own hands. It was close to Valentine's Day, and I decided that I would discreetly purchase some happy pills myself. Then one night, I told my husband that we should try and be together one more time. I told him that I had a feeling that it would be different. James didn't seem too confident, but he reluctantly agreed. Just before I went into the bedroom, I crushed up a couple of the happy pills and roofied his wine. He had no idea what I had done, but it made all the difference. We were finally able to be together. After that night, we started enjoying life more. Our relationship began to get a lot better, and we fought way less. It seemed like solving that one issue was just what we needed to remind ourselves that we could still love each other. It really became nice. Any night that we wanted to be together, I would do the same thing and roofie his wine. It worked every time, and James had no clue what I was doing. I was so relieved that we seemed to be getting our lives back. Then, one night, it all went wrong. It was Valentine's Day, and my husband and I actually decided to celebrate it for the first time in a while. We went out for a fancy dinner and then returned home to be together again. I wanted it to be an extra special night, so I decided to crush up some extra happy pills to put in his wine. I just wanted to make sure that everything went really well. The only problem was, that same night, James popped a few happy pills himself in preparation for the big night ahead of him. He too was trying to make it extra special. If I had only known, things might have been different, but James wanted me to be surprised. After drinking his wine, I could immediately tell that something was wrong. He clutched at his chest and seemed to be having trouble breathing. Then, he suddenly dropped his glass, shattering it completely. Then he fell to the floor. He wasn't moving.
James! James!
James died just a few minutes later. I called for help immediately, but they were too late to save him. It was revealed that James had taken a harmful dose of the happy pills, and the cops arrested me that same day for murdering my husband. I tried to explain what happened, but they wouldn't listen. I spent the rest of Valentine's Day in jail. The whole time I was there, I kept wishing that I would have just told James what I had done. Everything might have turned out differently. This story was inspired by a horrific incident that happened around the Valentine's Day of 2007. In an attempt to spice up their lagging love life, the wife of a 50-year-old Italian construction worker spiked his wine with 2 crushed-up quote-unquote happy pills. Later on, the man suffered a severe heart attack. The man was immediately transported to the hospital and miraculously survived.